Hello everybody, this is Serpent, and in this video I'll be showing you how to use every single item in the Redstone tab. I'll be going from top to bottom, left to right, so that'll give you some idea of where in the video you need to find any specific component if you're looking for a specific component. But that's about all I need to say, so let's just hop right in. The first of the things in the tab is going to be the dispenser, and the dispenser will either use or spit out an item that is put inside it when given a redstone signal. So for example, it uses an arrow. It also uses a flint and steel. However, things that can't be used will simply be ejected, as a normal dropper would do. Droppers and dispensers are both blocks that can be bud powered. So that means that putting a redstone block here and then updating it will cause it to activate. And likewise, currently it's still powered, but when I update it, it no longer is. Actually, I can show you that like this. See, it didn't spit anything out there. That's because it was already powered when the button activated. If I push it again though, it spits out the item because it was no longer activated after being updated. So I'll get into bud powering in a different episode, but for right now that's about all you need to know. So dispensers are a little different from droppers, and this is a dropper, that's a dispenser. Droppers will spit out an item no matter what's inside it. It won't use an arrow, and it won't use a flint and steel. Like the dispensers, they can be bud powered. Now, the next thing is a note block, and note blocks will make a sound whenever they're activated, whenever they're given a redstone signal. It can be either a direct or indirect signal, but the block will activate anyway. Like so. So the sound this thing makes depends on what's underneath it, and to clear up any any misconceptions, the block under this one is air, and these ones I will just let you listen to, and you can see what block is under what. And those are actually classes of blocks, not just individual blocks. So if I were to, for example, go back to the starting one and place a piece of quartz underneath it, it makes the same sound as the stone. And that's because stone is just a class of blocks. It's a material as opposed to an individual block. So quartz can fit the material without being the exact same block as stone. Now all of these ones here currently don't make any particularly special sound. Soul sand makes the same sound as normal sand. However, all these blocks here are going to be given their own unique sound in the 1.14 update. And I was going to test to see whether all these pumpkins, all these different types of pumpkins, would make the same sound. I imagine they would, since it's the same material as normal pumpkin. But sadly, we can't figure that out just yet in this current snapshot that I'm recording in right now. There's probably a snapshot I could have recorded this in, but I don't want to mess up any other mechanics later in the video. Anyway. So yeah, currently you can see most of them make the piano sound, and that's because any block that the note block is set upon that is not pre-specified within the white list of changers there, material changers, is going to just emit the piano sound. And that includes air. Now, you might think this would also make a sound. Sadly, you would be mistaken, as any block on top of the note block will negate its sound. So even the button does that, anything other than air. Moving on to pistons. Pistons exist, and they will push a block when given a redstone signal. There are two different types of pistons. One is the normal one there, it'll just push, and then there's the sticky piston, which pushes and pulls. you can see that they can both be placed in any direction, up included, and the maximum number of blocks that a piston can push is 12. Sticky pistons only pull back the first block. It doesn't pull back all 12, and all pistons can be bud powered, just like dispensers. There used to be a piston here. So you can also see that it doesn't matter which direction you bud power them, which direction they're facing when they're bud powered. However, it does matter which direction they're facing when you try and power them, normally, without the bud part. You can't power through the front. So, you may have noticed that piston was missing. That's because we're moving on to TNT next. And the TNT will light, wait, and then explode. And you can see there that TNT explosions can light other pieces of TNT, which can lead to some rather nice chains. The TNT will break blocks when it explodes, and before 1.14, TNT does not drop 100% of the items that it breaks as items. So if it breaks, say, 10 blocks, it doesn't necessarily drop 10 items. However, in 1.14 that's changed. Every single block that a TNT block breaks is going to drop itself as an item. So, next things next, we have levers, or levers, depending on where you're from, and they will behave essentially the same way as buttons. You can place them on the sides of blocks or on the ground, and they will directly power the block that they are sitting on, with a signal strength of 15. Next are pressure plates. Pressure plates will directly power the block beneath them and indirectly power the blocks adjacent to them, with a signal strength of 15 for the stone and wood plates, and a variable strength for the others, which I'll explain in just a moment. The stone pressure plates can be activated by any creature, whereas the wood pressure plates can be activated by a creature or an item, which you can see that the the stone pressure plates cannot. And I will just give you a quick demonstration of a blaze, giving us the same effect. Now, these two blocks here are different slightly. The golden pressure plate will increment its signal strength upwards 1 power per one entity on top of it. So to give you a look at that in action, switch to this. 1 item, 1 tick, 2 items, 2 ticks, 3 items, 3 ticks, 4 items, 4 ticks, etc. When you get to 15, it no longer matters, since that's the highest redstone power. You can put 16 items, 40 items, 2,000 items, it'll still put out 15 redstone strength. The iron pressure plate will put out 1 tick for the first 10 items that you put on top, 2 ticks for the next 10, 3 ticks for the next 10, 4 ticks for the next 10, etc. And has the same sort of cap as the other. Moving right along, we have ourselves some redstone torches. Redstone torches will directly power the block above them, and indirectly power the blocks adjacent to them, save for the block they're sitting on. The power they emit will be of signal strength 15. Here you can see a couple demonstrations of the way these things power the blocks. They will directly power the block above it, which indirectly powers the blocks adjacent to it. It will indirectly power the adjacent blocks. So this one is indirectly powered, but it doesn't power that lamp. Likewise, it won't power the block it's sitting on. These torches will turn off when they receive a redstone signal to the block they're sitting on. So you can see that these two torches turn off there because they're both attached to the powered block, but this torch doesn't turn off from either of these two buttons. Next, there are trapdoors. Trapdoors can be placed in any orientation, both on the bottom block and on the top block. They'll open when you give them a redstone signal, and they can be placed against blocks as well as hover in midair. The fact that they can be placed like this can be used can be used for entertaining purposes, and they'll just open up into your face if you open them while standing inside. Next is the fence gate, which can be opened by right-clicking, like the trapdoors, or opens on the on redstone signal, closes on the lack of it. They can also be placed above the above a gap of air. They don't have to be placed on top of a block, and they won't break when that happens. And that's a new feature. I don't remember exactly which version that happened in, but it wasn't always that way. So, moving along again, Redstone Lamps. Redstone Lamps I've been using throughout this whole endeavor, but they will turn on when given either a direct or indirect signal, and they stay on for 2 redstone ticks longer than they're powered. So you can see with this will be a 0-tick pulse. You won't even be able to see that redstone just turn on. The light will turn on for 2 ticks. Now, there are tripwires, and the tripwire hooks, can be placed on the sides of blocks and strung with string. You can string up to 40 blocks of string, and once strung, the string will activate the tripwire hooks, which will power directly the blocks that they're sitting against. They will indirectly power blocks adjacent to them, including the blocks beneath them. And likewise, this will work. I feel string, though not in the redstone tab, deserves to be, at least slightly, because you can place it, and then once you place it, even if it's not attached to a tripwire hook, you can directly detect its activation with observer blocks. The string will emit an update whenever something enters it and whenever something leaves it, like so. String will also emit an update when another string is placed against it, as you can see there. However, it won't update if string next to it updates, as you can see over there. This brings us to observers, which detect updates placed in front of their face and emit a redstone signal out the back, a direct one, which has a power of 15. So this can be chained together. You can see there is some delay. That's a delay of 1 tick per observer, and this can be used in various different situations. Whenever one of these observers is moved with a piston, it will also emit a redstone update when the push finishes. There are a lot of different behaviors with these guys, depending on what block you're using and what the update you want to detect is. So I would suggest looking on the wiki or just testing it yourself or something like that for a specific situation. Next, buttons. The stone button and the wood button are slightly different in that the stone one can be activates for 10 redstone ticks when pressed, and the wood button activates for 15 redstone ticks when pressed. The buttons activate these blocks directly, so they'll power the adjacent blocks as well, as you can see with the lamps and that little piece of redstone dust. So another thing that's kind of cool about these buttons, stone buttons don't do anything when you shoot them, but wood buttons will turn on for the duration of the arrow's existence, which is a minute, or until you pick it up. Next are trap chests, and trap chests will activate will send out a redstone signal, an indirect redstone signal of power 1. You can see there that one piece of redstone dust is flashing whenever you open them, and for the duration of their opening. Interestingly enough, this doesn't update the block, and so the observers can't be used to detect this action. If you have a double chest, a double trap chest, then opening one will open the other, and thus both will emit a redstone signal. This will be detected by, in this case, both of these repeaters, which turn on the lamps, as well as the redstone dust beneath, and it will even activate the trapdoor on top, which you can see through the gray right there. So as soon as you exit the GUI, this signal turns off. It's an indirect signal, so it won't power this repeater here, as you can see there. Daylight sensors and nighttime sensors. Daylight sensors will activate with a signal strength depending on the strength of the daylight that's reaching them, and if it's nighttime, then they won't emit any signal at all. However, the nighttime sensors, which you can get by right-clicking a daylight sensor, will activate, and they will activate with a slightly different formula for figuring out how much signal to put out per for the light level, but they activate in darkness as opposed to light. Now, if you want to know the specifics of this system, of the activation strength, I would suggest looking on the wiki for that, because I don't know it exactly. Next things in the Redstone tab are Redstone Blocks. They will indirectly power all blocks adjacent to them with a signal strength of 15. You can extract this with a repeater or with a redstone dust, and as you can see here, it is an indirect signal. This block does not power that block. So, next things are the hoppers. Hoppers can extract items from inventories above them and move them to inventories that they're facing into. They can be placed in any of 5 orientations, with the little tail bit, the inserter, poking into one of the 5 blocks. They can't point up, but they can point north, south, east, west, down. And so they can be used to transport items anywhere that is not above the location that the hopper is. You can power these hoppers either directly or indirectly, and when you do so, they will stop transporting items. They will stop activating. You can see that there are no items going in here, and no items in the hopper. If I break this, then you can see items do start flowing through the hopper at a rate of 1 every 4 ticks, 4 redstone ticks. If I open this chest, though, they'll stop, and that's because this is a trap chest, which is kind of nice, useful little trick. Here's some transportation action. The hopper here pulls out at the top, puts into the bottom one here, which places them into this next hopper, and the chest. If I power this one, powered hoppers can still receive items. They just can't eject items. So it'll fill up with items. It just won't move them on. However, we're moving on to iron doors and iron trapdoors. Iron trapdoors and doors are the same as other doors and trapdoors, except you can't right-click them open. They require the redstone signal. However, it does bring us on to normal doors, which oddly enough we haven't done yet. And these can be activated with any indirect redstone signal applied to any portion of the door, either of the two, and they will open up on the redstone activation and close on the redstone lack. You can open them or close them with your fist, and if you give them another redstone signal after doing so, they'll reset. depending on how you place these doors, they will either not join together, or they will join together. And they can also be placed in the backs of blocks, depending on where you want them, with the same little quirk. So, repeaters. We touched upon this in the first episode, and I won't repeat most of the information I said there because it's all pretty simple. But they'll take a signal in from the back, either direct or indirect, and they will spit out a signal from the front, a direct signal. You can see that in action here. They'll rejuvenate the pulse and they'll delay it. And if you give them a pulse from the side into the side with another repeater or comparator, you can lock them. And that means that they won't change state no matter what happens to their input. Like you can see here, this does not turn it on. And this will now turn on. If I do this, then despite the button's lack of activation, this repeater remains activated. Like I said, you can you can lock a repeater with another repeater. You cannot lock a repeater with redstone dust. You can lock a repeater with a comparator. Speaking of, comparators will take a pulse in from the back, an input from the back, output from the front, in the same situation as the repeater, and they will delay this pulse by 1.5 ticks. Now, a cool thing about the comparator that I forgot to set up is that they will emit the same strength of pulse as they received in the back, unless other constraints are applied. So you can see here that this is power 13. This is also power 13. It did not reset, did not rejuvenate the pulse. Another cool thing about comparators is that they can be really useful in telling how many items are in an inventory. They can be used on various different objects, not just chests, but the strength they emit is dependent on the fullness of the inventory. If you want to see how this works more, you can look on the wiki, but it's not too complicated, I don't think. The percentage of the inventory that's full, the percentage of the slots that are full, will dictate how much power is spat out the back. So, they can also be useful in other ways, and this is a little bit more complicated, not much, but a little. So, if you give the comparator a pulse in the back, then you give it a pulse in the side, it seems to turn off. And that's because currently it's in compare mode. It's a comparator. So if you give it a strength in the side and a strength in the back, it will either turn on if the strength from the back is greater than the strength in the side, or it'll turn off if the strength in the side is greater than the strength in the back. This strength here is 13, and this is 15. So with this on, the comparator does not have any strength coming out the front. With that off, this is 0, and that's still 13, and so it'll go all happily out the front with a strength of 13, the original strength. If you can see here that this is still a greater strength than this. This is 14, well that's 13. However, if we switch it into its other mode, subtract mode, it will subtract the incoming strength it'll subtract the incoming strength from the side from the incoming strength from the back, giving you the outgoing strength. So currently it's 13 minus 0 is 13. And if we turn this on, it's 13 minus 14 is 0. Well, rounds up to 0. However, if we move this and give it a couple other redstone dusts, then it's 13 minus 12 equals 1. And that's the new strength. Lastly, we had the Lectern. The Lectern is a new block from 1.14, which is in the snapshot I'm currently running, and it will hold a book that you can place in it. I have 10 pages here labeled, and it being on the first page gives out one redstone signal from this comparator. Comparators can indeed detect the book inside. Moreover, they can detect what page you're on in the book inside. So as I flip through these pages, the redstone lamps out the back gradually turn on until I reach the end. And it will oh, sorry, I took the book out of the lectern. And moreover, it'll remember the number of pages that you're on. So it'll keep the redstone signal. And of course that means that you can come back to number 6 as opposed to 1. However, that's all the time I have for today. That's all there is to talk about today. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully I get my hat back soon. Wonder where that's gone. Interesting snapshot we've got here. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I don't know where it's gone. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.